So, of course, the first thing I have to talk about today is NFL preseason football. We're not going to sit here and look at highlights and break down every single game. Not going to do that. That's not what this show is about. Again, we're talking about the top 3 headlines, and we have to talk about preseason football for it, but we can't sit here and break down every single game, every single result. If you guys want more of that kind of content, just let me know in the comments. I could definitely provide that for you. But for right now, let's just look at some of these. This is from CBS.com, CBS Sports, I should say.com. This is the preseason leaders. I know these stats don't matter as much, but hold on. Before you even say, Neil, it's preseason. The stats don't matter. The wins, losses don't matter. No, I agree with you. But I do think they matter a little bit. There are some things to take away from this. Not the wins and the losses so much. I don't really care about those because, as we all know, and this is the same thing with the stats to a degree, a lot of these guys will not be playing when the NFL season starts week 1, right? Most of them won't even make rosters, right? So at the end of the day, we have to take all this with a grain of salt. However, I still believe there is value to take in a particular player's performance, to watch what the team is trying to do, kind of the mood of the team. Is there leaders on the team? Are things looking right? I think you can tell those kind of things. I think there are storylines that hold true in preseason football. So I'm not the type to totally negate it and write it off. Others are. That's fine. That's up to you. Let me know in the comments if you do that. Why do you totally write it off? Do you not take anything away from preseason at all? I do. So let's go ahead and bring this back up here. So these are some of the stat leaders. Again, you may not even notice some of these names. Again, some of these names won't even play this season. If they are, they're backups or third, fourth string type of stuff like that. But at quarterback here, passing yards, nothing significant. Stetson Bennett, interesting. Drew Lock, we know, is the backup to Geno, so that doesn't really matter. Passer rating is a little interesting. Matt Barkley, obviously, I don't think we care about that with Josh Allen. Aiden O'Connell is interesting because we all know Jimmy G is a starter in Las Vegas. There's a chance he gets hurt. If so, Aiden O'Connell is likely. I mean, they say Brian Hoyer is the backup. The way Aiden O'Connell looks in this game, I could actually see him being the backup. They really like Hoyer, though. They trust Hoyer. He's known this team, these coaches forever. And so he likely is the backup quarterback. But Aiden O'Connell looked fantastic, again, in this situation, in the context. I'm not going to keep prefacing it, but just understand that we all know it's in context. Trey Lance actually didn't look great. Lots of weird tweets going out there about, Shanahan trying to set him up to fail and all this crazy stuff. I don't buy it. I still would like to see Trey Lance in a different situation, honestly. At running back, rushing yards, Emmanuel Wilson looked pretty good there with over 100 yards. No one else actually has over 100 yards here, which is interesting. But again, none of these names are significant for the most part, especially if we're talking about fantasy football. For the team's sake, some of these guys are going to matter, but in fantasy, for sure not. This Calvin Austin, if you guys seen that play, absolutely electric play. Go to the Rival Twitter at Rival Fantasy, and you'll actually see I actually tweeted that play out, and it went crazy. And it just didn't look fair. The play did not look fair. You can say Calvin Austin is fast. Yes. You can say the cornerback made a bad play, bad angle, whatever you want to say, bad coverage, that's fine. But Calvin Austin is flames. He was leaving him in the dust. I think we're going to see more of that this year. So that is one of those guys where I'm like, I know they have a lot of wide receivers in Pittsburgh, but I still think there's value there. There's something to look at, pay attention to. Again, if you're in dynasty, Calvin Austin isn't a horrible idea, of a guy to look at and pick up. Raiders, Cole Fotheringham, not really going to matter probably. Some of these guys, this is the interesting stuff, is someone like him, who is really nobody to the team coming into this. He's nobody who's going to make the roster. It wasn't like a set in stone type of thing, second or third string. Now you see a game like this and you're like, I don't know, man, if he can continue that through the playoffs, is he going to find his way onto the team somehow? These are the kind of things that I say they might matter. They might. We don't really care too much about, kickers, punts, all that kind of stuff. Obviously, defense is kind of weird in the preseason since coaches aren't really, ain't really playing calling to the max here, right? So, that kind of stuff I get even more. But scoring, the kickers here went crazy. Obviously, they kick a lot of field goals, regardless of whether it's preseason or not. There are some interesting names. These are just scoring leaders in general, so guys who score touchdowns, basically. And the kickers, like I said, are at the top here. A lot of running backs, kickers. No one of significance. Nothing that we're really seeing peak out here. Like I said, Calvin Austin, I think, is an interesting one. Guys like Sincere McCormick, it's not really a thing. Josh Jacobs is going to return. There's not really going to be any room for guys like him. Keelan Cole, same thing. Once Devontae Adams is out there, Hunter Renfrow, all these guys, it's just even Jacoby Myers didn't play either. So guys like him aren't really going to matter. Khalil Herbert, that play was fantastic. So those are things where the Khalil Herbert one's a good one, right? Like one of those things where everyone's raving about the rookie and saying Roscoe Johnson's going to do this, going to do that, and people just aren't in love with him for whatever reason. I do love actually Khalil Herbert. I think he's a great player. I think he's going to tear it up. I think Roscoe Johnson is not a threat to his job at all. And so for stuff like that, when you see Khalil Herbert do that, and with a pass, no less, that hurts your Roscoe Johnson wave. That hurts, this thing that you're trying to build over there. So I don't want to get too much into it. It's just, the kind of the first week of preseason for a lot of teams. But in reality, I do buy into some of the storylines, all in context. The stats are all in context. The wins, losses, I can care less about. The wins, losses are the least important thing to me. Least important thing. I do think guys are winning backup jobs in this. I do think guys are getting onto fantasy radars in this. This is one of those things where if you're playing dynasty football, especially dynasty, more than any other thing, there's always bench space on your team, right? Like your bench isn't loaded. Your bench isn't loaded unless you're in like a 6-team league or an 8-team league. Your bench isn't loaded. A real dynasty team has a deep bench, 12 plus teams, and everyone goes hard. If that's the case, some of these guys at peak and preseason, they're not all going to really pop. They're not all really going to become, bona fide stars or starters in the league, but some will. One or two. If one or two leak through and you hit on them, that's significant to me. So I do definitely in dynasty and fantasy look at the preseason and take some of that with me. Again, it's all in context. You're certainly going to get guys who popped off in preseason and don't do anything in the NFL for the rest of their life sometimes. So I get it. But just understand that there is some value there. I'm curious now for you, what is it that you're paying attention to preseason? What do you take seriously? What do you make note of? Right? You don't have to go all in. You don't have to go crazy. But what do you take note of that you take enough of a seriousness with it where you're going to note it? You might, make a move in fantasy. Is there anything in preseason that makes you do that? Or are you all in on Neil? Preseason is worthless. Offense, defense, I don't care about none of it. I don't care what players do what. It's all worthless, and that's how I move. If that's how you move, let me know in the comments.